I want to present you two ways to like not follow what I take to be the received view in philosophy, at least, with respect to topics that I guess I take for granted that are somehow related. I mean, I guess in this audience, I can take for granted that. Namely, the open future and the thesis that there is somehow a real passage of time in reality, that the passage of time should be taken metaphysically serious. Okay, let me start with talking about the open future, what I take to be the received view and what's wrong with it, and the kind of modification I suggest. Okay, then we'll do something similar with respect to passage, and at the end I will try to put the two things together. As you will notice, the two non-standard, the two non-received view seems to pull in different directions, but I will try to convince you that that's actually not the case. In any case, let's start with the openness. So I take it for granted that there is something like a pre-theoretical notion of openness with respect to the future. Plausibly, there are at least two elements that goes into this pre-theoretical notion. One is our sense of agency. If I start moving my arm that way, it looks like I can, I have this phenomenology of being in a position to stopping at any time that I want, changing direction, do more or less what I want. Okay. In other situations, I might be more constrained by the environment, but roughly the idea is that there is this strong phenomenology that the future is to a larger extent up to us. Okay. And this seems to suggest, at the level of what might be called the common sense narrative about how reality is like, that there are no determinate facts about the future, or at least it seems to go very well hand in hand with this idea. Another idea that possibly is part of the theoretical notion of openness is our natural attitudes towards the normative stages of memory as opposed to the normative stages of expectation. At a psychological level, memory and expectation maybe are basically the same phenomenon, maybe are just like way of imagining. But nonetheless, we treat them very differently when it comes to the legitimacy of attributing memories and expectation. Memory is essentially factive, so I cannot remember my beautiful New Year's Eve in Iceland if I never have been in Iceland, or at least not during New Year's Eve. Okay, so if I think that I remember the beautiful New Year's Eve in Iceland, I'm mistaken about the attribution of the kind of mental state that I do to myself. Okay, I'm not remembering because in order to remember to having been in Iceland, I have to have been in Iceland. Okay, so I can remember my New Year's Eve in Croatia if I have been in Croatia during New Year's Eve, but I cannot remember my New Year's Eve in Iceland. Okay, it's not a memory. It's a mistake to attribute memories. Maybe the kind of psychological state that I'm in is indistinguishable from a real memory from the point of view of psychology, but as a matter of attribution, we intuitively follow this norm. Okay. Expectations are completely different. I can have in 2019, I had an expectation, and indeed a justified one, to get married in Barcelona in June 2020. As you might suspect, the world didn't collaborate. And so my expectation was false, was as a false content, but it was an expectation nonetheless. It's not wrong to attribute me an expectation. That's again, since it suggests, or at least goes very well hand in hand with the idea that there are no determinate facts about the future, whereas there are determinate facts about the past. Now, Let's cover theoretical. What has openness in this sense has to do with the indeterminates. So we have been talking about indeterminates in many different ways these days, as randomness, as here I have in mind just nomological indeterminates. Okay, and we can take a fairly weak version of these roughly. You know, the thesis that given the present state of the world and the laws of nature, it is settled what future facts obtains. Now, what has to do indeterminism in this sense with the idea that there are no determinate facts in the future? Well, I take it that there's a sense in which the two theses are actually orthogonal. Okay? There's the space of possibility that goes precisely like that. So we have indeterminism, determinism, no determinate future, no determinate facts about the future, and determinate facts about the future. And definitely we have, you know, the position which are non-problematic, no, having indeterminate, nomological indeterminism and no determinate fact of the future, nomological determinism and determinate fact of the future. However, I don't think that in the space of possibility, those two slots are empty. I think that we should not take them too seriously, but I think you need a reasoning, an argument, or at least a story about why not. Then I will give you one. But just to give you an idea of what does it mean to combine these? Well, you might think that the laws are deterministic. Okay, so the laws tell you, allows you to compute what the future states will be like. However, as a matter of fact, reality is such that there are no determinate future facts. Okay? You might think that this is an interesting position. I actually sort of agree with you, but I think that you need to tell me more about why it is, because it is in the logical space. And the same with the other two, with the other like strange positions. So it might be that the laws are indeterministic, so they don't allow you, to compute the future states. However, as a matter of fact, maybe because of things that have to do with passage, maybe because there's no real passage, so there's a sense in which reality is simpliciter, the all of it, from no temporal perspective whatsoever. There are determinate facts about the future. Again, you might think that this position is not so interesting. I also share your view in this case, but we have to say something more about it. Now, I characterize the openness in terms of there being no determinate facts about the future. So what does that mean exactly? Well, I think there are at least two models of openness that follow this general idea. We can use an analogy that is good up to a certain point and is bad, but instructive nonetheless up to another. And this analogy is with reference failure in philosophy of language. Doesn't matter if you're not familiar with it. Take a sentence like that pigeon is acting weirdly. So imagine that we are in a parking lot and I gesture toward the center of the parking lot and it says, that pigeon is acting weirdly. However, as a matter of fact, the parking lot is perfectly empty. There's nothing there, okay? So there are a lot of theories in philosophy of language of what to do in these cases, but One of them, and that's the one that I need here, has it that then what I said is indeterminate. So there's no determinate content. I didn't express anything because there was a failure of in referring here. Okay. Other case, imagine that there's a bunch of pigeons there, and none of them is particularly salient. Okay, it's not that we've been talking about the black pigeon all the time, and then there's a black pigeon there. It's not that one is particularly acting in a very weird way. No? Maybe I don't know. It's going on a little bike. I don't know. No, they're all doing stuff that can be seen as weird or not a little bit, and it's not clear whether what I'm referring to by using that pigeon in this circumstance. Okay. So, where's the analogy? Well, you might think that there are no determinate future facts about the future for an ontological reason, because there's nothing in the future. So maybe the future is such that it is like a parking lot with no pigeon. So when we so the future is such that there's no determinate facts because there's no facts at all in the future. Or it might be that there's more than one future, and that's why there are no determinate facts about the future, because there's more than one fact, and there are more than one fact that concern the same things and they are incompatible with each other. Okay? So roughly, this is the topological determinism of the future, and correspond to what is sometimes called the idea of branching time. Is the future continuation. Now, I said the analogy is good up to this point, but is also bad. Why is bad? Well, because in the case of failure, reference failure, the reason why there's no determinate content there is intrinsic to what goes on in the parking lot. Of course, the parking lot plays the explanatory role insofar as we are in the context of talking about what I've said by uttering these and gesturing toward the parking lot. But it is just because there's nothing there, or just because there are too many pigeons there, that the reference is indeterminate. Okay, but that's not exactly what happens in the case of the future. So the future as temporal location is indeterminate insofar as it is future. It's not that when the future arrives, it is indeterminate. It might be indeterminate for other things, but not with respect to what we are talking about now. Okay. So if it's indeterminate, that whether tomorrow will rain or not, that doesn't mean that there's something intrinsic in the temporal location that makes it the case that it is indeterminate. Indeed, when the temporal location will become present, it will be perfectly determined whether it is raining or not. Okay. So the difference here is that the future is always indeterminate as of the present, never indeterminate as of itself. Okay. So there's nothing intrinsic in the future that makes it indeterminate. It is the future as a relative temporal location with respect to the present. Okay. So there's a sense in which there is something indeterminate in the present in order for there to be an open future. Now, the received view, I take it to go with what can be called the weak indeterminate present and the openness-based niche. The idea is that there's nothing in what let's say, constitute the present, in the sense that nothing of the facts that are the present tense facts that are, you know, uniquely about a certain time, that makes it the case that the future is open. It's just that there are future tense facts obtaining at the present, and there is indeterminacy with respect to which future tense fact obtain in the present. Okay, and this indeterminacy is explained in terms of indeterminacy in what fact present tense fact will obtain. So it is indeterminate, you know, whether the future tense fact it will rain tomorrow, or the future tense fact it will not rain tomorrow obtains today, because it is indeterminate whether the present tense fact it is raining or the present fact it is not raining will obtain. Now, I don't have a knockdown argument against this view of the opening of the present, openness of the future. However, notice that if you are after, okay, an idea of openness, which is not epistemic at all, but is a genuine form of metaphysical openness, this account is a little bit suspicious. Why? Well, for two main reasons. Why? One is that it looks like that in order to have a seriously metaphysical thesis here, you have to take a brute relational fact here. So it is the relation between the present and the future that is such that there is indeterminacy in the future tense fact that present will obtain because it is indeterminate, no, which present facts, which present tense facts will obtain. It's not, as again, remember, it's not that there is anything intrinsic in any of the two temporal locations that makes that the case. Now, the future temporal location, when we become present, it will be perfectly determinate with respect to the present fact, tense fact about rain. Okay. So you need to take this brute relational facts between the temporal location in order to have and the other reason connected to this is that well, it seems somehow easier to think of these relational facts as a merely epistemic effect. So it's just because we don't see, you know, what present text facts obtain in the future temporal location, that there is indeterminacy in the future tense fact in the present. Okay. At any rate, I think that one can try to construct a different view of the openness, which is the strong indeterminate present openness of the future. And the idea here is that it's not that there are facts that are merely future tense that are such that it is indeterminate which one in the present obtain, but there are present tense facts. So facts that constitute the present time, they are intrinsic to the present time. They are such that explain why it is indeterminate what present tense in fact will obtain. So there is some present tense indeterminate fact that can explain the future indeterminate. What are those indeterminate facts? Well, there has to be, so first of all, the point is not that it is unsettled whether they obtain or not. No, it's perfectly settled. They obtain. The determinate obtain. There's something in the structure, though, that makes them indeterminate. And these explain why the future is unsettled with respect to which present text facts will obtain, and if you want, so also which with respect to the future tense fact in the present. So one example, which is like one that doesn't have much metaphysical eyes, but I think it's a good intuition plan. Imagine that there is a senator who has to vote certain bill and still has to make she has to make up her mind. Okay, and imagine that on this vote will depend whether the bill pass or not. Okay, so you may say that as of a certain time, as of the present, where the senator is not still she still hasn't decided to make up her mind, it is open whether the bill will pass or not. Okay. Now there's a sense in which it is because there is this indeterminate fact in the mind of the senator that the future is open, that is unsettled whether the bill will pass or not. Okay. Now, of course, we might think, this is just a matter of representation indeterminacy. It's just a matter of so maybe the facts in the mind of the senator are perfectly determinate. The psychological facts are perfectly determinate. It's just that are such that we will describe the situation as he still hasn't made up her mind. Fair enough. The point is that here it's clear the explanatory link. Is this because the state of the mind of the senator are of a certain kind that they presently obtain in their present tense facts about her mind that the future is indeterminate. Okay? In order to have a more metaphysically more robust view, I think that the natural thing to do is actually going back to the idea that those positions are actually not interesting when it comes to genuine openness of the future. So the idea would be that well, we need some theory in which the laws are deterministic in order to explain why there might be present tense facts that are such to explain the openness of the future. Okay, one way to go, and it's just one way in which an article that Christian wrote is to take the genuine collapse theories of quantum mechanics and basically interpret those facts in terms of a model. We piggyback on certain intuition, certain theories by Jessica Wilson on determinate facts, in which you have it's an electron, a determinate property like having a spin along the y, and having an indeterminate state of facts with respect to the determinate of this determinable. So basically having something, well, we talk about these complex properties because we want to go here a bit more general, but the idea would be like, you have up, y, and this will correspond to something like the superpositions of up and down. So there's an intrinsic fact about the electron that is present tense, obtained in the present, and explaining why the present tense fact that we'll obtain are unsettled as of the present. So there's something intrinsic about the present that makes the case that the future is open, as opposed to the received view in which there's something in the future as future, namely the unsettledness of the present tense fact, that makes the case that there's something open in the present. Okay. Now, let me quickly move to real passage now. So one way to make sense of the philosophical debate on the reality of the passage of time, the framework of what we may call the standard theories, is to ask the question whether time is a dimension or time is merely a dimension. What does that mean? Well, take a view in which clearly time is merely a dimension. So take a view in which, for instance, you have just a normal Newtonian space-time, or any space-time in which you have an absolute notion of simultaneity. And you can think that, well, once I give you these, once I give you the temporal relation between the various, whatever you have here, events, let's say, I gave you everything that is there with respect to time. I gave you the full metaphysics of time. Of course, here we have absolute simultaneity, so we can, we can have things like time, so hypersurface, no? And a view according to which this is not all what there is about time is a view which there is one time, one hypersurface, which has an absolute property of being present. Okay. Now, this is this corresponds to what we might call the standard tense realism. So taking tense properties, in particular the property of being present, as fundamental, so being realist with respect to tense properties, and seeing the story about what time is as not just merely in terms of having a temporal dimension, but also in terms of there being an absolute matter of fact with respect to which time is present. Now, notice that it's not just the attribution of presentness as such what makes it the case that in this view time is not merely a dimension, or if you want, making the case that this view is a realist count of passage. So think of the case of space. Okay, imagine an Aristotelian or new Aristotelian space in which there is a center of space. As it happens, is the spatial position occupied by the center of gravity of the Earth. There is something special in this spatial position. Okay. Now, this view has nothing in it dynamic, or that makes it realist with respect to temporal passage. Okay, it's a view that is compatible with indeed a universe in which there is no time at all, where it's just space. So it's not just merely the attribution of a property that is objective and somehow spatial to a temporal location that makes it the case that here we are talking about a reality in which time really passes. Okay. So the idea is that once you attribute a temporal presentness, well, you need to have in your theory that can be encoded in presentness as such, or by some other assumption, but you need the theory in which how the whole of reality is like changed. So there is never the case that at all time presentness is at the same time. You need a theory in which the temporal dimension is not merely in which time is not merely a temporal dimension, in the sense that you need a theory in which what is present is always different, and in a sense, this is explained in terms of the whole reality being always different, because presentness is a fundamental property. So the more natural way to see this is in the so-called presentist model, in which indeed, you don't have anything else but the present. So basically, in this view, reality is just space, and the content of space constantly changes. Okay, but even if you have other views, in this view, the time clearly is not a dimension. But even if you have another view, like the so-called growing block, time is at least a very peculiar dimension in this view. It is a growing block. You have the past, and you have always newer layer of reality. So what is present changes constantly, and the whole of reality changes constantly. But even if you are a moving spotlightler, in which you do have the whole of temporal location, you still have the whole of reality changing dramatically, because the presentness is a fundamental property, and where what time is present change as time goes by. Okay. Now, standard tense realism can be seen as riddled by a problem that initiates by, then it was pointed out, or at least as it is in the literature nowadays, more than 1 century ago, by McDowell. I think there is a nice way to put it, which is like, there are, I know, thousands of versions of his argument, thousands of views about whether the argument is actually interesting or not. I don't really care about that. What I care here is how focusing on a version of these arguments allow us to move from the standard picture to what I call a non-standard picture. Okay. So the problem can be put in these terms. Okay, if you if you think that time really passes, you need be realist with respect to tense. This is the standard received view. Okay, a way to flesh out this thesis is in terms of what facts constitute fundamental reality. So we can think that you need the thesis that reality is constituted by tense fact, is fundamentally constituted by tense. But then, if you're a standard realist, you need that this constitution of tense fact be absolute, because it's perfectly fine for a non-realist with respect to temporal passage to have tense facts, but only obtaining relative to times. Okay, you don't need it. You need so you can have tense facts. Maybe the tense fact that I'm sending, relative to a certain time, that is perfectly fact with a reality, perfectly compatible with a reality in which there is no absolute presentness. Okay? Just the tenses are just relative to time. Then there is the requirement that the facts that constitute reality are compatible with one another. Okay? You don't want, at least in the standard picture, you don't want a reality that is constituted by incompatible facts, that it is incoherent in some sense. Now, if you have these three options, and this is the nice aspect of McTaggart's point, you can't have also the thesis that times are all on a par. That no time is privileged with respect to the constitution of reality. Why? Well, because if no time is privileged with respect to the constitution of reality, then if I'm standing, realism the fact that the tense fact that I'm presently standing obtain, and it obtain absolutely. But then I'm sitting, the fact that I'm sitting, presently sitting, obtain absolutely. But then coherence has to go, because reality is constituted both by the fact that I'm standing and by the fact that I'm sitting. Okay? So if you don't want coherence to go, you have to drop neutrality, and this is the way in which standard realist goes, and saying that, well, no, it's not true that no time is privileged. It's just a blunder. No, when it is present, every time is the same as any other when they are present. But with respect to what facts contain, which facts constitute reality, only the facts that obtain at present constitute reality. Okay, so that goes in line with the idea of constant change of the whole of reality as it is. No, the fact that I'm standing constitutes reality absolutely. When I sit down, the fact that I'm sitting, presently sitting, constitutes reality absolutely. So there's never incoherence. Now, I don't have time to tell you what I don't think is good in this view, but one way to abandon the standard position and have a non-standard views is to keep neutrality, okay, and to abandon coherence. Okay. Another way is to abandon absolutism is the so-called external relativism, but also I don't have time to talk about it, so I can talk about it in Q&A if you want, but let's just focus on the way that I want to go. So abandon coherence. Okay. If one abandons coherence, reality, there's one reality. Okay, it's not like a view in which every time is a different reality. Okay, which would be the abandoning absolutism. There's one reality, but the fact that constitute this reality do not cohere with each other. That doesn't mean that we have to accept contradiction in reality. Why? Well, because even if reality is globally incoherent, it may be that with respect to time is locally or at least regionally, so with respect to the whole temporal dimension or in the relativistic version timelines, it is coherent. So the idea is that with respect to the facts that obtain at different times, we can take this fact and consider the various collection of those facts, and talking about fragments of the temporal dimension. And within each of these fragments, reality is coherent. So within each of these fragments, there's never the fact that I'm standing and the fact that I'm sitting. It is only relative to different fragments in which we may have non-coherent facts. Okay. So the idea here is to have an account of how the tense fact constitute reality, in which it is enough, okay, for a tense fact to obtain at some time or another to constitute reality absolutely. But it is not enough for two facts to constitute reality absolutely to constitute reality together. Now I'm already over the 15 minutes, or 15 minutes. Okay. Now, what is good in this view, I think, is that allow us to not just to encode primitively an idea of passage as it was in the standard tense realism, but actually to give a sort of explanation of what passage is, in the sense of allow us to articulate how the various tense fact in the various fragments behave with respect to one another. Okay. So the idea is that we can order the fragments in a way that it doesn't mean that there is no temporal relation between the fragments. Otherwise, we basically fall back on a bit here. We can order the fragments by using internal relation between the fragment, roughly the idea that there is overlap between the facts that constitute the fragments. And then we can say that if a fragment X is in a certain order relation with the fragment Y, roughly the relation that corresponds to the idea that one is in the past of the other, okay? Then assuming that will phi obtain in a fragment Fx, we can say that this is the case because in the fragment Y, phi obtained. So the idea is that we don't just take the changing of reality as a brute thing, okay? It's not just we say, oh, of course, if I add presentness and I say nothing more, this is a reality with a stuck present. No, it's a reality in which nothing's changed. No, I mean we have presentness in each fragment, and then we have explanatory relation between the various fragments. So in a sense, we can say that the thing that we find in this fragment, are such that will be in a certain way, well, because there is another fragment which are the way. So another way to put it is that in the standard view, the movement of the present is a bit of a Munchausen movement, so it pulls itself. Okay, where because you only have the present, one present, this is privilege, and then you have to just somehow say that it's always different what the present is. In this view, you have the future that pulls the present, and also the past that pushes. But anyway, now, why the two views might be seen as in tension? Well, because here we are saying that the openness of the future is given by something intrinsic in the present, and here we're saying that the explanation of the passage is given by the fact that there is a determinate fact in the future that explains why I cannot say if it's in the future I will sit, I cannot say I'm standing in a way, because well, the idea is that the two things, it's true that they push in different directions, but we should let them push in different directions because one explains openness and the other explains passage, and that's the crucial thing. So you have that openness is given by the fact that each present contains these intrinsically indeterminate facts, and the passage is given by the fact that in each fragment there are actually determinate facts, and that explains why reality will evolve not from one state, from being a certain way to being in another way. So so I think that going non-standard or non-received view in both cases pays off, and that's it. Thank you very much.
Are there any questions from the audience? Tim?
So, I mean, there's a tremendous amount of things happen.
Yes.
but it all kind of spools out from the pre-theoretical openness.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that I just don't quite understand. It's true that we think of ourselves, of course, essentially as agents in the world, right? It's very important to our picture. That we think that certain things in the world are under our control, that the way the future will be depends to some extent on our decisions, blah, blah, blah. Okay, so I think one thing I can control is whether, in fact, this key drops from my hand and hits the table in the next minute. And maybe I'm now gonna deliberate about it. So I have some pure subjunctive conditionals, like if I should let go of the key, it would fall. What makes that true? Gravity that makes that true. If I don't let go of the key, it won't fall. What makes that true? Friction makes that true. Okay, so we understand the truth makers of those pure subjunctive conditionals. And I deliberate and I'd say, gee, would I prefer the thing to fall and hit the table or not? I say, because I'm trying to make a point here, I would prefer that it fall and hit the table. Bang, right? On the basis of my preference, I make a decision. On the basis of that, I release my fingers. On the basis of that, the thing falls. Now, none of that deliberation and seeing myself correctly as an agent in the world. I mean, if the question was, will the train arrive at the station on time? That's not within my power. There's nothing I can do will make any difference to that. None of that, as far as I can tell, requires the future not to be determinate. It's not incompatible with all of this being coded in the initial conditions of the universe, right? The truth conditions for the subjunctive conditionals are just given by the laws of physics. So it seems to me that people feel like I need an open future because I want to think I'm an agent. But now they think they need something really fancy or complicated to get that. And they're just looking in the wrong place, right? Because all I appealed to here was, kind of simple facts about gravity, things like that. That I can open and close my fingers. Look, I can, see? That's within my power. That's something I can do.
Yeah, no, with some sense, but I agree. I mean, like, it's not that. So here I'm saying, well, if you want to take this notion, the theoretical notion of openness, and metaphysically serious, then that's the best way to go. That's a conditional claim. I do agree with the general view that you don't need an undeterminate. You don't need that there are no determinate effects about the future in order to make sense of agency. And it's even, and also you can perfectly make sense of the phenomenology of agency in a completely deterministic, completely too close. That's I completely agree. And the same, by the way, also with respect to the passage of time. I'm also working on this experience of the phenomenology of the passage of time, and my account is being dependent by the physics, and I will insist the fact that even if we have like Posher block universe view, it works perfectly and is phenomenologically cogent. So I agree with that. Okay, it's just that here I wanted to explore, if we have to take this, if we want to take this seriously, where should we go?
There's time, Mike.
Another question, or do you prefer to take it to lunch?
Yeah, just a quick one then. I mean, I have a lot of questions, but I'll ask you for lunch. I think what you said at the end about the compatibility between SIP openness and the new fragmentalist view. I mean, you say that they can be compatible because they actually explain different things. But I wonder, like, can you have just a question? Can you have within fragmental? I was assuming that in fragmental, within each fragment has to be such that every fact is determinate. I mean, that's the standard view, right?
Yeah. So,
and it seems to me that SIP openness requires that there are indeterminate facts. I like SIP openness, unsurprisingly, but I don't know whether it's actually compatible with fragmentalism. That's, I mean, the standard one. So,
but well, wait. So the idea is that in fragmentalism, the idea is that you can have those kind of facts, the facts in which it's determined and obtained, but they are indeterminate in the sense that there is a determinable and it is unsettled, which determinable and is unsettled, which determining is obtaining. So in each fragment, you can have these facts. And this is compatible, with having in each fragment also facts that are determinate with respect to facts that are so you can have a fragment in which you have this electron is in this superposition state, okay, and another fragment in which the indeterminacy has been resolved, so you have spin down, okay, and as a matter of fact, they are linked in a way that this one is pseudo after this other one, okay. The idea is that the openness of the future is given simply by the fact that there is this superposition state in this fragment, and the passage of time, the fact that is because here you have this determinate. Now, the point is that if you are with the standard view, you cannot really accept that because you want to have the locus of indeterminacy in the future from the point of view of the present. But if you drop that, indeterminacy is just given by those guys, okay? And so you can have fragments that are perfectly determinate with respect to the indeterminacy that you had in their past. In the formal is what we have in the book with Samuele is a thin red line. Basically, you have a branching structure of the fragment. Do
you have this too?
No, we didn't. I didn't have them. This is just so just to make sense of it. This is what we brought together, and this is what I brought with in the book with another coach. So no, I didn't think about putting this and this also because I was very too many to just stuff. But I realized just thinking about this conference that it was absolutely compatible in a nice way. So